Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Captain's Table. I am your host, Captain B-Nard, and topic of discussion today is going to be a recap of Season 9 of The Walking Dead, the horror/drama TV show on AMC, of course. And we're also going to talk about a bunch of other stuff pertaining to The Walking Dead. And here to discuss all that with me, returning to the Captain's Table for the seventh time, we have Mitchelonius. Welcome back.
I was doing podcasts before anyone's paid me to do podcasts.
Well, I guess that would count as now because I still don't pay you. But in any event, thanks for being here. And of course, this is not the first time that we've talked about The Walking Dead on the show. Actually, last time we were here talking about The Walking Dead was just a few weeks before season 9 premiered on AMC, and now that we are a few weeks out from the end of season 9, I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and kind of just take a look at what exactly happened in season 9 and where the show is today now because of season 9. Because season 9, we really saw a seismic shift in the landscape of the show. Arguably the biggest of all time on the show. Definitely up there with a couple other seasons, if not the biggest shift the show's ever seen. So definitely a lot to talk about. Before we jump into talking about season 9, this is your official spoiler warning that obviously, if you've not watched all of season 9 of The Walking Dead and or are unfamiliar with the comic books for season 9 and beyond, this is your official spoiler warning for that. So, before we get into talking about season 9, though, I just want to briefly go back to kind of set the stage, prior to season 9. So, last time we were here talking about The Walking Dead, as I mentioned, it was a few weeks before season 9 debuted, and the feeling on the show, or about the show rather, was pretty negative, I would say, at that point in time. Season 8 was over. The whole war arc with Negan and the Saviors versus Rick and everyone had just ended at the season finale of season 8, which took up 2.5 seasons. It was a very anticlimactic end to what is widely regarded by most fans as the best storyline arc from the comic books that really was kind of mishandled and underwhelming on the TV show. We, of course, had the untimely death of Carl, which was not in the source material, which we talked at length about how that was the worst decision the show had ever made. Last time, we are going to be bringing that up again this time because it still factors in to the story moving forward. And we had also been given the information that Andrew Lincoln and Lauren Cohan, the actors who play Rick and Maggie respectively, would not be renewing their contract with the show, would be leaving at some point in the beginning of season 9. So, really just kind of not a good feeling about the show going into season 9. Would you not agree?
I agree.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's not really debatable in my mind. I don't think there's a lot of fans who would say that situation was good going into that. But so that's kind of where we were left in the franchise. As we approach the beginning of season 9. I don't know if you want to add anything to that or if that pretty much sums everything up on you for you as well.
Well, I mean, season 9 needed to be the season to fucking save The Walking Dead. In my opinion, the previous season wasn't very good.
No, and the one before that not either. So definitely
Yeah, I
a
mean,
lot of
it took a
pressure.
very large, took a very big downward spiral. I mean, there's just so much dumb shit that happened.
Yeah, to put it mildly, yes, 100%. So with that said, I think that's a good place to start. Go ahead and jump into talking about season 9, and we're going to start off with the first episode. And in the beginning of the first episode, we see a 1 year time jump, and at the time it was not specified how much time had passed between the end of the war and the beginning of season 9, but it was later specified that it was a 1 year time jump. You see a lot of advancements, in the society and the technology that everyone is using. you see kind of like a medieval lifestyle adaptation from a more primitive way that people were living up until this point, or some people anyway. Um, and you see all the communities essentially working together for the most part to kind of make everything as good as it can be, which makes sense obviously. So in the beginning of the episode, a mission led by Rick occurs at a museum, presumably in Washington D.C. I think it was, and they go on this mission, to get stuff as they often do. And after the fact, there was a young kid with them that ended up dying. I believe they were attacked on the road afterward, and that's where he ended up getting bit and killed. This kid so happened to be a resident of the Hilltop, whose parents were obviously very upset about this, transpiration, and they got mad about it. And of course, since this is the Hilltop, we still at this point have Gregory. Remember that guy lurking around in the shadows? I guess it was said that in the off time of the show that there had been an election for the leadership of the Hilltop, and Gregory had lost that to Maggie, who was just kind of like the presumed leader up until that point, but she was actually officially elected as the leader of the Hilltop, which of course did not sit well with him. So he kind of sees his opportunity to stir the pot, and he ends up getting this grief-stricken father who's a recovering alcoholic drunk, and sends him on his way to go ahead and kill Maggie, as Gregory often does, as we've seen from him in the past numerous times. That doesn't work out so well. Obviously, Maggie finds out it was Gregory and confronts him about it, and that ends up leading to the public hanging of Gregory, the death of Gregory at the end of this episode, which is a moment ripped straight out of the comics, actually. So that's really the focus of the first episode here, and I have to say, I actually quite enjoyed the first episode of the season. I think that for the most part, The Walking Dead is at its best when it sticks to the source material, which it hasn't often done in recent seasons. But yeah, it's this was a really good episode, I think, and a really good way to try and breathe some life back into the show. I really like the way that they, the storytelling and the writing and the way everything played out. You can definitely see an enhanced quality of all of those things with new leadership, as new producers and showrunners and all that stuff had been set in place. Our old buddy Scott Gimple not doing that anymore, fortunately for everyone. But yeah, but I'm interested to get your take on that. The season premiere there, Mitch, if you would.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it just didn't sit right with me because, not that it was bad. It's just you got an elected official, that kind of broke, democracy by essentially taking a situation into her own hands and what she felt she should do, and like making an example out of somebody that like tried to assassinate her, so to speak, or conspired to do so. And I feel like unless you're Negan,
Yeah,
that's kind of something I would expect from him, not necessarily one of the protagonists, so to speak.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I get that they're trying to allude to some sort of like dark side Maggie has, but I mean, again, look at all the crap like Rick had gone through prior to that, all the people and things that he lost, and
Right.
some off of decisions that he felt were right and made, which costed some people their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
he had his moments, yeah, sure, where he
Right. Yep.
sorry about that, my wife's phone's ringing and she's not getting away fast enough.
Oh no.
um
Technical difficulties. Live recordings and the
um
perils that follow, folks.
this is true.
But
he he did have his moments, but again, he was a much, in my opinion, leadership is something that uh, not everybody can do. Not everybody can be a leader, and
Right.
I feel like it's kind of a weakness when you have to make an example out of somebody instead of just
Finding another way.
do it. Yeah, like finding another way. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that kind of stems from the fact that like she's trying to prove a point. Like if someone tries to kill you, you kill them. Like it's a dog eat world right now. You
Right.
know, but that also alludes to like, well, no one can be trusted. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep. Yeah, no,
hmm,
and I definitely see your point there, and I do agree with that partially. I would also factor in, as I mentioned, that this is not the first time that Gregory has tried something like this, so he's had ample opportunities to kind of change his ways, and he's proven time and time again that he is unwilling to do that. So I think that makes it a little more understandable. I mean, public
they could
hanging
have
is
always locked him in a cell with Negan.
yeah, there you go.
Oh
Public
wait,
hanging
no,
is
never mind. She
pretty.
didn't agree with that either.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Well, we'll talk a lot about that in a little bit, um, but yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. There, public hanging is kind of a brutal way to go. Especially I think there were kids present too. That whether that was advertent, I think that was inadvertent, but that was part of it as well. But yeah, no, the bigger picture here. I mean, you can argue whether it was the right decision or not, but I enjoyed.
Well,
I'm not gonna.
it's only because the guillotine was being used somewhere else. You know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue whether it was right or not. I'll remain undecided on that. But I appreciate the storytelling behind it, and the fact that it's building towards something else, which is the unrest that is left in Maggie's character, especially after Negan was left alive at the end of last season, which was something that she. Wholeheartedly disagreed with, to say the very least. So, but yeah, no, I enjoyed watching that all play out. But moving along, we're going to get into the next couple episodes. I am, just so you guys know, since there is so much to go over here, I am only going to touch on the plot points that I feel are the most important to the story. I might have missed some, possibly. Probably, but I am only going to try and focus on those to kind of keep this, at a reasonable time. So, we're going to get into the next thing, which is, of course, as we mentioned before, Negan being jailed in Alexandria, and he proceeds to be visited by Rick in the jail cell, who talks to him about everything that's going on and how they're rebuilding society and making everything work and all that kind of stuff. And Negan kind of says, that it's not going to last, and you make sure you come back and tell me about the day when it all falls apart, essentially. Important side note that I know you're chomping at the bit to throw in is that as far as the source material in the comics go, this is not supposed to be Rick talking to a prison cell ridden Negan. It is supposed to be the now deceased Carl on the TV show, which obviously would create a much different dynamic than Rick and Negan. But we have to throw.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the whole thing between like Negan and Carl kind of had some sort of a, I mean, I would say
Like a
almost like a father
twisted,
son
yeah, in a twisted way,
excuse me,
like almost
relationship,
yeah, in a twisted
or even
way.
just like, Negan was like the cool uncle that would disappear from time and time and always come back with some crazy stories and let you like do crazy stuff, like in a way, and like
Fair
stuff
enough.
your parents wouldn't let you do, but like I just didn't like how they took that away, like
Oh
because
yeah.
it also showed how much of Carl was actually Rick, because there's a point where Negan somehow through talking with Carl gets the illusion that like Carl has forgiven him and like Carl's his friend because Carl would bring him like food and they'd sit and they'd talk and Carl would actually seek advice and things like that. And then the last time Carl actually goes to see him, Negan kind of goes, "Hey Carl, do you still want to kill me?" And Carl turns around and simply says, "Yes, Negan, I do," and walks out.
Yep. And there you
You
go.
know, it kind of shows that in a way, for Carl. Yeah, Negan was like a tool for him, kind of to
Like an outlet almost.
balance. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like he could say whatever he wants to him, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it doesn't change like how he truly feels, which again is like a Rick quality.
Of
Rick,
course.
you know, he he'll always feel how he feels, but he'll still might, choose the opposite depending on what gets said or how it gets said or
What he feels is right.
what his people
Yeah.
think even
Hmm.
as opposed to this situation where the majority wanted Negan dead
Of course.
and Rick went against it, obviously in the show for different reasons than in the comics, but in the comics, or I mean in the show, obviously it was because of Carl's letters,
Right.
and kind of like his last wish, I guess, was to like just stop the killing,
Yep.
which again was very different than
Yeah, it's that infamous
in the comics.
infamous dissension from the source material. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
because
definitely get your
Carl, he
point
was
there.
becoming kind of a dark character, but still not immoral.
Right.
He was almost like Negan 2.0. Like he was kind of like Negan without all the evil stuff.
Yeah. Definitely. No, I definitely get your point there. But so yeah, so that's going on, early in the season as well. We also have the situation where all the communities are trying to work together to build this bridge, which is like a transportation, travel, trade route type thing between the communities. Very symbolic, obviously, as well. And also we find. Moving along, that there is a lot of unrest with the ex-saviors. There's a lot of people who don't obviously like the arrangements, and they don't like the way things are set up, and they're still bitter about the war. And there's that on both sides of the equation, which feeds to the next thing, which is actually the fact that you have the members of Oceanside actually kidnapping and killing the ex-saviors, specifically the ones who had executed Negan's orders and done them wrong personally. So you have like this vendetta that's going down, and that's creating a lot of unrest with people. And at the end of one of these episodes, it just so happens that Maggie and Daryl end up finding this out, and they find the people who are doing this, and they actually try to stop them and persuade them not to do it, and then they kind of take the mindset of, or the defense of, oh well, this is the last one, and we won't do it anymore, and we're it's kind of like they're taking their pound of flesh back essentially from the now ex-saviors, which again you can argue whether or not that's right or not, in and of itself as well. I'm kind of on the fence about that one too, but at the same time, at the end of the day, Daryl and Maggie decide to turn a blind eye to it essentially, and let the Oceansiders go ahead and kill these people, which again just speaks more to the darkness coming out in these characters with specifically Maggie, I would say. So that's interesting to see that all whole play out, and kind of the encompassing feeling that you're getting out of all this stuff is that there's just so much left unresolved after the end of the war, specifically the way it ended, which is, again, makes sense to me. So, I'm okay with all of that. But but it is at that point that Daryl and Maggie decide that they're going to execute the plan that they had devised. At the end of last season, I guess that we talked about it, that really weird scene where they were plotting against Rick, essentially, it seemed like. But now that has become more or less a plan to infiltrate Alexandria and kill Negan finally, because they can no longer live with the fact that Negan is alive. So that's kind of the direction that we are taking at this point in the show, which definitely makes sense. I don't know if you want to weigh in on any of that stuff or how you feel about that. I mean, it all
I
kind of makes
mean,
sense to me.
yeah, I mean it's pretty cut and dry. Like they've made it very clear from like right away that they didn't agree with the whole locking him up thing. So you knew at some point,
This was coming.
that their minds were going to come together and be like, well, because it's not the first time that Daryl or Maggie has disagreed with Rick. It's just it's going to be probably the first time that they actually try to go through with actually going over Rick's head.
Right.
Which ultimately, in my mind, kind of preluded to the fact that Rick.
What happened to him happened.
Yeah, and he probably isn't going to be really around much longer because seasons prior, nobody does anything without Rick say so or okay. No matter how bad they want to do it, they
Right.
don't.
It's the old Rictatorship, as they call it.
Yeah,
uh,
which I was okay with though because the reality is Rick from day one when he showed up at the camp and Shane was there and and that was instantly Shane's concern was, oh shit, like alpha dogs here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and he's always had that commanding
damn it.
presence about him. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
he's like, fuck, because when they were cops, if I remember correctly, they were partners, but
Yep.
I do believe Rick was
The sheriff. Yeah.
his superior as far as
He was.
standing in the police force goes. So,
Yep.
Rick has always been one up over,
Yeah.
whoever he's been around.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. So yeah. So speaking of Rick, at this point, we flash back to Alexandria, and we have Rick knocking up Michonne as a surprise turn of events there. They're planning for the future, quote unquote. So he winds up doing this pretty much right before, conveniently, right before he catches wind that something's going down, that Maggie's going to come to Alexandria, and he assumes that since she hasn't been there, she is coming to kill Negan. So he springs into action to try and stop this. Daryl's like, "Oh, hey, you want to get back to Alexandria? I'll give you a ride." Except for, oh wait, he's in on the plan too. So we're not going to Alexandria. We're going into the woods. So you can't stop it. So,
Well,
um,
just on the topic of
yeah.
Rick and Michonne, real
Oh,
quick,
sure,
just a
go for it. Yep.
side note, you know, um, didn't he see what happened with Lori? Does he not remember that?
I guess
Like
he's finally over that. Like 6 seasons
yeah,
later, or whatever it is,
and,
five
and
seasons.
not just that though, but like really all the shit that you guys have been through while having to worry about a kid, like all of a sudden because Judith can like walk now and run now, you're like, yeah, it's time for us to have another one. Like,
I'm not
let
saying
someone
it
else
makes
have
the world
another
of
one and see
sense.
how that works out. You know what I mean? Like,
Hey, hey, I'm not saying it makes that. I'm not saying that makes a lot of sense, but that's what happens. So I can understand it. A lot of this stuff I'm on the fence about because I can understand it in one way. You want to start rebuilding society, X, Y, and Z. I get that. It on the other hand, I see your point. It is definitely a huge liability in this zombie apocalypse world to do something like that, as has been shown on numerous occasions in the past, and will actually be shown again later in what we're going to talk about here. But yeah, so that happens. But as I said, Daryl drives Rick into the woods to get him away. They get into a fight basically and end up rolling down into a hole in the ground where they kind of just have it out as far as war of words. And Daryl kind of takes the stance of how could you do this to everybody, specifically Maggie, to keep Negan alive, and X, Y, and Z. And Rick still takes the defense of that it's hasn't been harder for anyone but him to keep Negan alive, but he feels he has to do it for to set an example, to honor Carl's wishes. And Daryl kind of goes there and he's like, oh, this isn't what Carl would wanted. And they get into it. And a horde of zombies is conveniently, shuffling by, so they have to kind of work together to get out of that sticky situation, and they do. And those zombies end up heading for the bridge that they've been building. So Rick devises the plan that he's going to go lead the zombies away while he sends Daryl back to the camp because they also heard there was a fight breaking out at the camp. So he sends him back there to kind of warn them and also break up the fight that is going down. So Rick, by no measure of coincidence, I'm sure, jumps on a shiny white horse and proceeds to lead the zombies away. Um, and in doing so, basically what happens here is he's leading the zombies away when the horse gets spooked, flings him off, and he gets impaled on a conveniently placed piece of rebar. Uh, right around the area of his left hip, I believe it was, or right above that. So he is now potentially severely or mortally wounded. And bleeding out. So that is how Rick incurred his wound from a spooked horse. So there you go. I won't nitpick that too much. I really do understand why that happened, because if you're gonna have your main character suffer a potentially mortal wound, you don't want it to, having it happen as an accident kind of makes more sense than like having a character to blame in a way, I think, unless it was
Yeah,
Negan, but
like
that ship.
having your hand cut off or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Although, unless it was Negan, but that ship's already sailed. But anyway, so the next episode we have, which is actually going to be the last episode with Rick on it. And okay, so here's another tangent until before we get into that final episode of both Rick and Maggie. I have to say at this point, AMC did something as far as marketing the show goes that really pissed me off, and that is they started marketing the show as quote unquote Rick Grimes' final episodes on The Walking Dead. And that just really, really bothered me, because you're just coming right out and saying, you're not leaving anything to the imagination, really. You're saying, oh, well, our main character's leaving the show, so you better tune in to find out how. Like what a shallow, short-sighted way of promoting your product. Like that, it just really irritates me. Like the fact that you are so desperate to drum up viewers for your show that you are compromising the integrity of your own show in order to try and get people to watch your show. Like that's crazy, is it not? Like what the
Well,
hell?
I mean, it's kind of their job.
Well, yeah, I mean, drumming up, viewership for their show, I get that, but like, I don't know, when you do that at the expense of the show itself, which clearly this is, that kind of crosses the line for me. That's something that just did not sit with me at all. Um, Another thing about this whole thing, and this was actually something that I was wrong about, that I predicted in the previous podcast when we talked about The Walking Dead, was I kind of figured that. With Rick and Maggie, the deal was this: they both had 6 episodes left on their contract heading into um, season 9. So I was kind of thinking, okay, well, maybe they'll have them skip an episode here or there, and then, they'll kind of build up to like a mid-season finale or something where they, plan to write, one or both of them off simultaneously. But instead of doing that, they just shotgun 5 episodes right in a row, like boom, boom, boom. And then they don't have them appear on a 6th episode, so they can hold that over the actor's head, like, oh yeah, you still got 1 episode left on your contract, so if we ever really need you, and if you really don't want to re-sign with us at some point in the future, if we ever really need you, we can still force you to come back for that 1 episode. And it's like, that's something else, that's just a way of doing business that I just don't really appreciate. Decision that I don't agree with, because at that point it almost feels like you're basing your entire show and your entire cast around pretty much one thing, when in my opinion, in my book, it's always better to place the characters and the actors around the plot and not vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, I think that
Hmm.
you do a disservice to your product, to your fans, to pretty much everyone when you do things the way that they did it. And it seemed so inauthentic and contrived that another thing that just really bothered me. And that's another thing that, I failed to mention earlier, but as you will see with season 9, this is just really a roller coaster of ups and downs here, and it only gets more extreme going forward. Um, But I don't know if you want to add anything as far as the how if any of that kind of rubbed you the wrong way or not, or if you're kind of indifferent to it. I don't know if I'm just being petty or what.
No, no. I mean, I feel like you made some fair points there, and I can't say that I disagree with any of them. I mean, it's it would just essentially me be repeating what you said because the reality is
Gotcha.
I feel very similar
You don't really like it
in
when
that
shows do
fashion.
stuff like that either.
Yeah,
Well, that's
I
good
don't
to
like
know
when
I'm
a
not
show.
alone.
No, no, and I'm sure people listening would agree as well.
Yeah, I would say so. So back to the actual point of what we're talking about. So now we come to what I like to call Rick's swan song. So his final episode, and simultaneously as this is happening. There's another huge happening going on which I'll cover first, and that is Maggie's plot to kill Negan. So basically, what happens here is she arrives in Alexandria. She's actually confronted outside of the jail by Michonne, who catches wind of what she's plotting, and Michonne tries to basically stop her and reason with her, and tell her no. And Maggie's not having it. Obviously, she came for Negan. It's time. He has to die. And Michonne, even Michonne, who was dead set on honoring Rick's wishes, that Negan be kept alive as an example, even she stands down and she's like, I get it. He killed your husband by smashing his head in with a bat before your eyes. I get it. You can't live with it. I get it. So, if that's what you have to do, do it. So she steps aside. Um, Maggie goes into the jail for Negan, and she basically pulls him out like she's going to execute him, basically in similar fashion that he, has done to others in the past. And at this point, Negan essentially breaks down, crying, begging to die, essentially begging Maggie to kill him, to finish him, because he can't stand the hell of being locked up anymore. He can't stand, maybe all of the grief and the resentment and the feelings of failure and anger and helplessness and X, Y, and Z, whatever you want to say, that he can't take it anymore, and he just wants to be reunited with his dead wife, Lucille. Wonder where that name came from. There's your answer. Um, but yeah, and at this point, Maggie takes a step back and she says, I came here to kill Negan, but I see that something far worse has happened to him. And she decides to leave without killing him. She decides that is closure enough for her on the situation, that perhaps the silver lining of Rick's decision that she hadn't considered is that Negan is living in his own personal hell right now, and that could perhaps be a fate worse than death. So,
Well, I mean, all in all, I do say that, like, there are people that feel like the electric chair, is giving the criminal the easy way out, because
right,
to have them, be incarcerated and is more of a torture because they're not just their eyes aren't just closing and they're either going to hell or heaven or whatever you
right,
believe in. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's they have to live essentially like an animal,
right,
at a zoo.
right,
You're behind bars. You get to, not in Negan's case, obviously, but you get to go out and like get like an hour of sunshine,
well,
and
not
then you're
yet
right back
anyway.
into,
We'll get that.
you
We'll
know what
get
I
to
mean?
that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like
Oh yeah, no, of
it's,
course. Well, that's always
but I
the
mean,
the raging debate. I think is what's a better decision. In those, and we're not going to open that can of worms up. That's open to
no,
each
no,
individual.
I
But I know you were
exactly, but
particularly pretty stuck on this one scene for a very important reason.
yeah, I mean, well, the problem is like Negan. That kind of, for me, showed you that Negan is dead. Like that there is no more Negan.
Right.
The second he was all sniveling and fucking, it just begging for death. Like, is that the Negan that you remember?
Not at all. No.
So when a character makes that extreme of a shift, and they're looking at like, and then on top of that, like taunting them to kill him because like they realize that he realized at least that Maggie was like, oh well, there's no point. And then he was like, kind of bringing up how what he did and the
Yeah.
stuff that he did. And like, almost like trying to reignite that fire, you know what I mean? That
Yep.
like, so that she would kill him. But like,
Yep.
again, it was too late for that because you've already broken down so hard in front of her that she even had the recollection of, holy crap, this isn't the same person that had Lucille.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I agree
um,
completely.
and I think that was just
It was a huge
that was a
moment.
very far,
Absolutely.
yeah, huge moment and a very far character shift for him. So
100%. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you could make the argument that perhaps I mean, because like we said before, this had only been a year's time since he had been locked up. So, perhaps it's a little unrealistic to think that he would undergo such a seismic character shift. And at the time, a lot of people, myself included, had this theory that perhaps Negan, read the situation, being the intelligent man that he is, realized that Maggie was there to kill him, and then essentially did the old reverse psychology with her to try and trick her into letting him live. And at first, I kind of thought that way too, but based on everything that has happened after the fact, I can say that I don't feel that way anymore. I think that this was, in fact, this wasn't just some trick on Negan's part to try and stay alive. This was a genuine moment, I think, with everything we've seen after the fact. So, definitely a huge moment.
I think that moment happened because the lack of Carl. Like he had he had the ability to be like someone was visiting Carl was visiting Negan on like a daily basis.
Right.
Like every day he would go down, and like I think without that factor, now Negan's just kind of sitting there stewing and
Yeah.
everything and thinking about how he got there. And like you said, I think that it was a genuine character shift because I mean, in a way that's kind of the point of like solitary confinement, is to like drive you crazy. And I think a year of that,
Could be
and
enough.
no matter how strong minded you are, or set in your ways you are, like you're like something's gonna snap,
Yeah.
you know
And
whether
clearly, I think that was the case here.
it switch or not is up for debate. But I mean, in that moment, I think it was genuine because he saw his out. You know what I mean? He saw
Right.
his way to just it be done with already.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right there. So, but yeah, but moving along, that's obviously not the only big happenings of this episode, as I mentioned before. So at the same time that this whole thing is playing out with Maggie and Negan, you have Rick basically stumbling around, bleeding to death, trying to lead the horde of zombies away with his injury. He goes from riding the horse to falling off the horse to to being passed out, hallucinating, and he sees a whole bunch of different people that have died over the years. He talks to, in his hallucinations anyway, Shane, Herschel, Sasha, among other characters. You know, and he inevitably finds his way back to the bridge, and he at that point, goes across to try and lead the zombies. And he was trying to preserve this bridge this whole time, but at this point, he realizes it's his only way to kind of maybe get rid of the zombies because he doesn't want them, the whole horde, to, obviously invade the, camps and everywhere and hurt people. So, being the hero that he is, of course, he tries to fend the zombies off. And when he spots a conveniently placed stack of dynamite on the bridge, don't ask me why it was there, but there it is. A little plot convenience, I guess. That's the only explanation I have why you would need dynamite on a bridge that you're building. But anyway, so he just makes the decision with everyone looking on. They all come, rushing out. Daryl, Maggie, Michonne, Carol, everybody. And he makes the decision to shoot the dynamite, blow the bridge up, blow up all the zombies, presumably kill himself at that point, or so we thought, or so everyone else thinks, and die the hero's death, of course, which does make sense. But moments later, we find out that somehow, some way, through some miraculous main character powers, Rick did not, in fact, die in that blast. He was washed downstream, where he is found by Jadis, none other than who's been floating around doing various semi unimportant things in these episodes as well. But she finds him, and she has contacted her magic helicopter that we've seen, in seasons past. That she has this unexplained or unexplored relationship with these people in black helicopters, which, as we know from the comics, actually belong to some super advanced civilization or group of individuals, and they pick up Rick and Jadis, and the last thing we see is Rick getting hooked up to IVs and oxygen and everything, and she says you're going to be okay. So they whisk him away in the helicopter, and he does not die. So before I get your reaction to that whole sequence of events, I just have to say, uh, I told you so. Because if you remember back to our last podcast, I did call that I feel like, because we knew Andrew Lincoln was leaving the show, I did call that Rick does not die, that they find a way to write him off, regardless of whether it's a bullshit or legitimate or whatever way. They find a way to write him off, and that's exactly what they did. So I want your thoughts on that whole thing. Personally, I think that it wasn't really a good decision per se, but I will say I think that decision was the best they could do, more or less, with what they had to work with. So everyone presumes he's dead, but he's not actually dead, so it leaves the door open for him to return if he ever has to or want to, and they don't have to kill the main character of the show, who was never supposed to die in the first place. So I call this making the best out of a bad situation, but I'm interested to hear your take.
I truly feel that was probably in my opinion, like the dumbest way that you could have Rick disappear, is all of a sudden, this imaginary, excuse me, this imaginary helicopter that somehow Jadis has like this connection with these people. Meanwhile, they were the ones living in fucking junk piles.
Yeah.
Has this connection with this, more advanced society with better medical care and
right.
Apparently helicopter fucking fuel.
Yeah.
What's next thing, able to call in an airstrike. Like I just I don't I just didn't like that. I felt like
it was kind of a cheap way
like
out. I'll give you that. That it was a cheap way out, but I feel like they were kind of backed into a corner and kind of had just about no other choice. But unless they wanted to stick Rick under the dumpster for the next 5 years.
Well, here's the thing too. Like, but I know what you're saying about contracts and how they still each have like, well, him specifically, he has an episode left, and
right.
Like, it just what difference does it make at that point, unless he's the one that comes back and with enough helicopters to take everybody to where they're going. Like, and if that's how they're planning on like ending the season, like,
oh, I sure hope
or ending the series, that's kind of way anticlimactic, because they fought so hard for everything that they have, and just to walk away.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the future holds. I definitely get your grievances, though. Like I said, I feel like it was just a shitty situation all overall. Like, there was really no good way out for them. But I still steadfast with my belief that a write-off rather than a death was a better way to go. Now, yes, I think maybe there could have been a better way to write him off, but I can't think of one. So I'm not going to pass too hard of judgment on that. But yeah, what are you going to do,
I mean, I don't know, dude. Like they killed Carl, so like
Anything's
I
possible.
don't think I don't think killing Rick really would have done that much more damage to the show, considering he wasn't going to be on it anymore either. And
Fair
like,
enough.
I mean, I've heard in you know inside the episodes and like from the directors themselves that the more important a character is, the more gruesome of a death they give them when he dies, because it's kind of like an homage to,
The
it's kind of like
character.
that honor, and the
Right.
fact that like Rick being who he was in the show and he just gets wafted off by a fucking helicopter, kind of, I don't know, man, just didn't really
Didn't
rub
resonate
me.
with you. No, I understand you. I
Yeah,
get you. Yeah, you would think like Rick would be the type of character to go out in some badass firefight, that kind of thing. Like he would go down guns blazing, that kind of character. And
yeah,
and if
like
they were to
take out,
kill
like
him,
obviously he took out a horde,
right?
with the bridge, they're all just falling off and stuff, which is pretty badass. But I think even if they just left it to complete mystery as to what happened after the explosion, I
Yeah,
think that would have been better than showing him being like airlifted. Like if it
yeah.
was like boom, and then like you have no idea what happened to him, and then all of a sudden, for his
Right,
final episode,
because we know that from history, if you don't see the body, they're not dead. That's like
exactly,
canon. So
exactly.
so
So
as long
I
as they
feel like
didn't
if they
show
would
his
have.
body, that could have been a good way to go. Yeah,
And
it's
that's
just
what I mean. Like, I feel like after the explosion, if like, everybody was sad, had their moments and grieved, and then like for his final episode, like he came back and just was like, you
surprise, I'm
know,
alive.
I, yeah, I feel like that would have been a lot better, because now even if he comes back, like he's gonna have to come back,
Well, the
like on a
problem
helicopter and
there's a
like,
there's a big if he comes back problem that I'm going to talk about in a second here, and that has to do with what we're getting into in what I like to call the post Rick portion of the season, which is episodes 6 through 16. Um, but yeah, it definitely creates issues. And I think the main reason they did it the way they did it is just to reassure the fans, like, oh, look, he's not dead. Even though now the more I think about it, the more I think maybe just leaving it at the explosion would have been a better way to go. But I do understand why they didn't do that, because they wanted you to know as the fans, like, no, look, it's okay, kids, Rick's not dead. You're never gonna see him again, but he's not dead. So
yeah.
um, but yeah, but if Rick ever were to return to the show, there is going to be a sizable issue with that, which is feeding into the next portion of the season moving along. And here's another little nitpick I have that really, really bothered me, is the fact that that whole thing with Rick being whisked away in the helicopter was actually not the end of the episode, because the end of the episode was actually a 6 year time jump into the future, where you see these group of five people who you've never seen before, who later will find out are going to become, relatively important characters in the rest of the season. But they're trying to fight off the zombies, and they're getting surrounded when they all of a sudden get covered by someone, in the woods. So that allows them to escape. They run into the woods, and lo and behold, who is the mystery gunman covering them but a now kind of sort of grown up Judith Grimes, who is now like 9 or 10 years old apparently, and also apparently Annie Oakley as well. Um, and I'm not entirely okay with any of that, but I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so they do that, and that's when they confirm later that this is a 6 year time jump from Rick blowing up the bridge to this point. So just the way that this is structured, I have to say, really did not sit with me, because I feel like a perfect way to end the episode, that was all about Rick leaving the show, would have been for, oh, I don't know, Rick to leave the show, um, and then for the beginning of the next episode, you could have had that scene where you have these, the group of people you've never seen before, and the whole thing with a grown-up Judith covering them while they escape. That would have been a nice way to open the next episode, and I think that would have made a ton more sense than what they did. But nonetheless, they did what they did. So, um, now I'm going to get into the issue I have with that situation, which is the relative implausibility, even in a zombie apocalypse world, that this 9-year-old girl is standing out there, you know, shooting zombies with guns that would realistically probably knock her on her ass if she fired it, because she's not big. She's not big for 9, folks. She's not. So, I take issue with the realisticness of this situation. And then the whole, she picks up the hat off the ground, the infamous Rick's sheriff's hat that was also Carl's, and now they're both gone, so now it's hers. And she's like, "Hi, I'm Judith Grimes," and I'm like watching it, going, "What is happening right now?" Like, did the Disney Channel just buy a piece of The Walking Dead and insert themselves into the show? Is that what I'm watching right now? Because that's kind of what it feels like. So I didn't really like that whole intro, but that's kind of where that was left. It is
Wouldn't
what it
uh, wouldn't
is.
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, they're buying everything, so what are you gonna do? But yeah, so that's kind of our segue into the new era. So as I mentioned, the new era of The Walking Dead is a 6-year time jump from the events of the first several episodes, with Rick blowing up the bridge at the end of that. Now, remember earlier I had mentioned that the last thing Rick did before he decided to go get hurt and blow a bridge up was knock Michonne up, and that leads to what, boys and girls? A baby. So another baby. And introducing RJ, Rick Jr., that is Michonne and Rick's child, who is 5 years old or whatever, who's also another character who hasn't really done anything because he's kind of a kid, like a small kid, which makes sense,
We just
but
gotta wait till we just gotta wait till he's 9.
got to wait for another
Then I'll be a master
another
marksman.
15-year time hop some point next season, I guess.
Yeah,
And then
yeah. And then he'll just
he'll
be
be
like
the main
he'll be like
character. But
yeah, he'll be like a
um,
master marksman and shit.
yeah, so that's
On
that.
top of that,
Right.
he'll like have a sword in one hand and Rick's python in the other.
Yeah, and he'll just be taking people out left and right. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so that's a thing now. There's a lot of other changes. But before we get into those changes in this next much larger time jump, as opposed to the 1-year time jump that we started the season off with, I have to say this, and that is the fact that the whole thing with Rick being gone, but the door being open for him to be back, that becomes a much, much harder thing to pull off now that you've had all this time pass between the last time you've seen Rick. So you have a 6-year time gap between those events, right? And you have to figure, if Andrew Lincoln ever decides to return to the show, maybe 3, 4 seasons down the line, if the show's still even on the air at that point, um, it's going to be at that point, what, like 7, 8, 9 years later in the show's time, if not more, that he's been gone. So it's like, where the hell have you been in the past decade? You know what I mean? Like, so
Hmm.
that creates a huge problem as far as trying to bring him back to the show, which almost leads me to think, why did they write him off instead of kill him in the first place? Because now it's going to make things even harder, to bring him back, if that is in fact the road that they do go in the future. But I digress. So we'll get back into the show with the changes, with the new time jump. Again, as I mentioned, grown up Judith, more or less, Rick Jr., RJ, he's a thing. Um, so we find out that Alexandria has kind of they're under the leadership basically of Michonne ever since Rick's disappearance slash death. But there's also a council which apparently Michonne is the head of and decides to overrule for everything. So she's basically the new dictator, and she has taken a much more um, jaded and cynical approach to doing business for undisclosed reasons, which we find out later in the season. We'll get to. Also, her and Daryl have these weird scars in the shape of X's over their kidneys on their backs, which is, again, something that ties into why is Michonne a bitch all of a sudden, essentially. And we get the explanation later, but at this point it's a mystery. So Judith essentially in this next episode brings these five, strangers back to the community. They end up being Luke, this fat guy who's like an ex-music teacher, Connie, who is a woman who is deaf. Again, kind of another hard. Maybe hard to believe situation going on there, that kind of bends the reality factor of how someone with such a severe handicap could have survived so long in this zombie apocalypse. But nonetheless, we won't get into that too much. And then we have Magna, who is like an ex-con, basically, tattooed, another woman, many tattoos on her. And we have Yumiko, who is an archer, crossbow. And then we have Connie's sister, who I do not remember her name, but that is the group of people, and they end up being relatively major factors for the rest of the season. So anyway, they are brought to Alexandria. Michonne says no. She doesn't want them in. She doesn't trust them. She doesn't trust anybody, due to, again, the undisclosed events during the time jump. And so she basically kicks them out and says, oh, you can go to Hilltop and see Maggie or whoever's there in charge, and maybe they'll let you in and whatever. So they send them over there. We find out through a conversation with Jesus and Tara, who are kind of running the Hilltop now that Maggie is not there anymore. If you recall back to season 8, there was an old woman, Georgie, I think, who was a member of another more advanced society, who gave Maggie the blueprints for the windmills that they put up in exchange for music or whatever in that one episode. But apparently the write-off of Maggie is that she is now living with them, with her baby Herschel, in their super advanced society, doing good things. So yeah, gonna pick another nit here, because I don't know about you, but that is a pretty goddamn bullshit way to write off one of your most important characters on your show. I don't know about you, but that's kind of not feeling that one either. Maggie, next to Rick, is one of the most, or was one of the most long-standing characters on the show, and to have her removed from the show in such an indirect and just dumb way, I really did not like that at all. I feel like that did not do the character justice in any way, shape, or form. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. I think you might tend to agree with me there.
No, I mean, it seems like The Walking Dead has kind of been falling short in how they handle their
main characters.
You know.
Yeah. Oh, hang on for that. We have a lot more to come on that front.
Well, I mean, look at just something as simple as Herschel, who, he was a main character, but at the same time, it's not like he was like, the status of like Rick or even Maggie.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, he got his head cut off.
Yep.
In front of everybody.
Yep. Yeah. I to be honest with you, I didn't really have a problem with that per se.
That was a good.
Yeah, that's a meaningful death.
It's a meaningful death. That's not a death like oh look, a helicopter, get on it, we'll save you. See you later.
Or oh, here's a letter from Maggie. She's not here anymore.
Yeah.
And surprise.
They even gave Carl a better death than or a better. It sucks to have Carl gone, but I mean, come on. It would no. Hear me out on this. Hear me out on this. If they were gonna kill Carl, we have no control over that, so they killed Carl, right?
Yep.
But he went out the same way I feel like his character would have on his own terms. He killed himself. He had the balls to shoot himself, just like he had the balls to shoot his mother. Yep. Even at such a young age.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I
I
that is to a point. That's fair. I mean, we're not going to waste any more time talking about how awful killing Karloff was, but maybe at least the only I think one I because I think last time we kind of struggled to find a positive in the death of Carl, and I still don't think
right.
there is one. But
There's
if
not.
there was one, as opposed to other character deaths or write-offs, at least his character got completion. At least his character got closure, even if it was nonsense, even if it was bullshit, even if it was the wrong decision.
And he still went out like a badass because
Right.
he was like, I'm pulling the trigger. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I think that was that was
you know,
also that he didn't want to have to put his dad or Michonne through that, which is
yeah, but what kid is thinking that? Like,
one that
normally
shouldn't
you
be
would
dying.
figure,
That's what that's the one that shouldn't be dying. Um,
yeah, exactly.
but yeah, coming back to the main point, yeah. So definitely not a good way to handle a major character write off. Obviously not death in this situation, but
Yeah.
moving forward from that, then toward the end of the episode, I believe it is, we have the situation where Eugene and Rosita are going on this mission to a
Oh my
radio.
God. And Eugene's hair. What is that? I
Yeah,
just have
if
to
you
say.
thought his look was bad last season, folks, that ponytail is killing me. I gotta tell you,
Oh my God.
that
It's
is
like attached to his mullet.
yeah, that is oh god, that is awful. But yeah,
Now
so
it's like party in the front, hippie in the back.
yeah,
Or how's it go?
business in the
Business in the
front,
front,
hippie in the
hippie in the
back.
back. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's not good. But so they go on a mission to a radio tower. They're setting some shit up. Of course, the zombies show up and they have to run away. Eugene gets hurt, twists his ankle or whatever, and they're trying to run away, but he can't. So they end up hiding down in a creek bed in the mud. And here is where we get a pretty iconic moment actually, which is the official introduction of the Whisperers as the zombies are shuffling past. They hear the zombies, whispering, talking to each other. So pretty iconic
Wow.
moment again from the comics, and again, as I mentioned before, we're starting to notice maybe a little bit of a pattern that, like I said, a lot of times, most of the time with The Walking Dead, I think the show is at its best when it sticks to the source material. But anyway, um, so we have that whole thing play out, which is fine, and that leads us into the next couple of episodes, which is not to circle back to Judith and all that, but we are going to, which is now we have Negan in jail still, obviously 6 years later, well, 7 total years, and we have Negan conversing with Judith rather than Rick or Carl in the jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Judith filling in for Rick or for Carl, I should say, on that front. Which again, I have to go back to a point that you said earlier. I get why they're doing it because who else are they going to do it with? But at the same time, Judith has no connection to Negan.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't mean the same thing as it would have meant, or as it was supposed to mean if it was Carl, or even if it was Rick, which it wasn't supposed to be. But at least those characters have that connection with Negan. She doesn't know Negan. She doesn't know anything aside from what she's told. She has no
Mm-hmm.
prior relationship with Negan. So having these discussions, which were supposed to be such a big thing in the comics because it was Carl, um, are not. They lose a lot of the magnitude behind them just because it's not Carl. And
Well,
following that,
maybe they needed Negan to kind of see the innocence of a child, you know.
possibly, I
Um,
mean,
but
devil's
the thing
advocate,
is,
but
yeah,
possibly.
but the thing is this though is, it's almost like Judith and Carl in the show in a way switched places
Yeah,
because in the comic books, like she didn't make it out of the prison.
right.
They found a bloody carriage or carrier or whatever, that they had her in a car
Sure.
seat that was mobile.
Yeah.
They found when they went back to find, like, when they went to get Judith, like it was just a bloodied child
Stroller,
carrier.
basically. Yeah.
And yeah, and so she wasn't even supposed to be any further involved. And now because Carl's gone,
They're kind
it's
of
kind of like she
replacing him
has
with
to
her.
take. Yeah, they
In
just kind of flipped it, and
in one way, yes. So the Carl Negan relationship, Judith is taking up the reins on those plot points. Similarly, on the other side of things, as we'll see with the interaction with the Whisperers and everything that goes down at the Hilltop and the Kingdom and all that kind of stuff, taking over for Carl's plot points on those fronts, we have Henry. You remember Henry, right? That little kid from a
yeah,
couple of seasons ago with the stick that
yeah, he was
Morgan
pretty good with his
trained.
stick.
Yeah, Morgan trained him.
Uh,
He was actually, you know, he wasn't a main character by any stretch of the imagination, but he was actually a relatively important side character at certain points in time. Of course, kind of in the strange adopted family that is King Ezekiel, Carol, and him as the son. He is now kind of all grown up more or less. He's like 16, 18, somewhere in there. I don't remember. But so he is going to be taking the reins for Carl's storyline points in that respect, which again, not terrible. Similarly to Judith taking the reins for Carl's other plot points with Negan, not terrible, but it doesn't have the same weight. It doesn't have the same magnitude behind it as it would have if it was Carl, which it's supposed to be. Um,
well, look how many characters they've had to split his part into.
yep.
Like that just goes to show you the importance of why he fucking needed to be there.
Yep, exactly. Not to keep circling back to it, but yeah, absolutely agreed with you there. So briefly, I want to talk about, Henry. So, he's obviously living in the kingdom with Carol and Ezekiel, and he decides he wants to move to the hilltop to be trained on how to be a blacksmith, so he can come back and kind of help the kingdom because the kingdom's kind of falling apart a little bit. Another side point that is brought up here that that will become a way bigger part of the story later is the whole fair thing that is going on because they start talking about it here that they're going to have like a trade fair at the kingdom to kind of get everything back on track and bring the communities back together and because the kingdom is kind of like in disrepair, like they have failing, systems and all that kind of stuff, utilities and whatnot. So, but anyway, Henry ends up getting taken over to the hilltop where he is, placed conveniently to act out many more, um, you know, plot points that are going to be going down. Um, so, at this point, he is over there, and he ends up, falling in with like I don't know if you want to call them like the bad kids or whatever at the hilltop, and ends up getting in some trouble, and getting drunk and locked out of the hilltop, and then getting thrown in jail the next day because I guess. Peer pressure is still a thing even in the zombie apocalypse. um, yeah. But in any event, so we have that whole thing play out, which puts him in conveniently in a jail cell in the hilltop, which is where he needs to be for some important happenings later on. But anyway, so back to our main point of the story. So at this point, we have Rosita finds her way back, and without Eugene. Because he has, she had to leave him behind, I guess, because she couldn't get him out because he twisted his ankle or whatever from, running from the zombies. So we have Daryl, Aaron, and Jesus mount this rescue mission to go find Eugene. They think they know where he might be, roughly. So they mount this rescue mission to go save him, and in doing so, they do encounter him. And this is, by the way, we are talking about the mid-season finale at this point. So they go ahead and they find, Eugene. They attempt to extract him. While they're observing some strange behaviors from the zombies, Eugene kind of tells him what he saw, and the initial theory that they have is that the zombies are evolving, and that's why they're starting to talk to each other, or at least that's Eugene's idea anyway. Um, So, they make their way through a graveyard, and here we have kind of another memorable scene unfold where the zombies are chasing them, and they're thinking like they're using like trying to use their typical tactics to like lead the zombies away, and it's not working. It's like they're purposely following them, so they get worried and they think something's really up, so they kind of have like a little showdown in the graveyard. Um, Michonne and company kind of bust in to help him out at this point, and we have this moment where Jesus kind of takes charge, and he's like, you guys get Eugene out of here, and I'll deal with the zombies. So he kind of steps up and he starts taking zombies out one by one until. He goes for a strike with his sword on one of the zombies, who in turn ducks the sword and proceeds to stab him through the chest with some sort of knife or dagger or whatever, killing Jesus. So that's a big one, the death of Jesus right here, in this episode. So, of course, immediately this, zombie slash guy who just knifed Jesus, it's kind of like it's a really big what the fuck moment. Like you just see Jesus killing zombies, and then all of a sudden a zombie just ducks his blade and stabs him and kills him, and it's like, what the fuck, like this is like crazy. So of course I forget who does it, but Daryl and Michonne and company bust back in and kill this thing, and then Daryl goes over and cuts this guy's mask off to reveal that it is not, in fact, a zombie that is evolving, but it is, in fact, a person wearing the zombie skin as a suit, which is the official confirmation, of course, of the Whisperers. So, pretty big moment there. In the show, as that is kind of the end of the mid-season finale right there. I don't know if you care to weigh in on any of that stuff. I think, aside from I think the big takeaway here, obviously, than the the confirmation of the Whisperers is, of course, the death, untimely, I might add, death of Jesus, who is a character that we know should also still be alive in the comics to this point. So I kind of I have to say again, like a lot of things that happened in this season, I have mixed feelings about this because I get why they did what they did. I don't really agree with. I feel like it could have been somebody else. I feel like it didn't have to be Jesus. That took the shot here and died. I
I
feel
mean,
like
it could have been anybody
it
else.
could have been literally anyone else, and it would have drove the same point home. So why they chose Jesus, I don't know. But yeah, so I have mixed feelings. I like the scene. I just don't like. I like the reveal of the Whisperers. I like all that. I just don't like the fact that it had to be Jesus to take the blade and die when it could have very easily been anyone else. But I don't know how you feel about that. Sounds like probably about the
No,
same.
no. I agree wholeheartedly about 100% the same way.
Gotcha. So that is good to know. So that is going to bring us to the mid-season finale, which is now, of course, going to lead us into the second half of the season. So we pick up, basically immediately where we left off in the graveyard there in the beginning of the second season, and we have, obviously the rest of the people escape there from the zombies and the Whisperers. That they now, the group now knows that there are these group of wackos that are wearing the zombie skins over them that are mixed in with the zombies, and they're obviously pretty freaked out about that. So they end up going, getting Eugene back for medical attention, of course, when they encounter more zombies, and at this point they kind of wise up and they start going for body parts because obviously zombies can't feel pain but people can. So and they flush out the Whisperers that way, which is a smart idea. And one of them they do not kill. They end up unmasking her, and it turns out to be a young girl who, as we all know, ends up being Lydia. who is, of course, the daughter of Alpha, who is the leader of the Whisperers. So rather than killing her, they end up taking her prisoner back to the hilltop, where, as I mentioned before, she lands in a jail cell next to the conveniently placed Henry in the jail cell as well. So there you have that. Um, from that point, the two, start to talk and kind of develop sort of a friendship, relationship type thing. Um, Daryl is there as well. He's trying to interrogate Lydia to get information out of her, as to, what the hell's going on, with this new group of people. She's very resistant at, doing this, at ratting her people out, so she lies about a lot of stuff at first, but through kind of talking to Henry, there's kind of like a good cop, bad cop sort of thing going on with Daryl and Henry, even though Henry doesn't really know it. And over the next several episodes, you get to the point where Lydia actually kind of turns, and she actually kind of, you know, starts to be honest and starts to, get along with them, and kind of starts to develop a relationship with Henry, as we know, of course, she should have been developing with Carl, who should have still been there. But
Yep.
yes, so you have that whole thing playing out, which was, pretty interesting to see play out, even despite Carl's absence. I feel like, again, the resonating feeling I have is this is, better, much better writing and better storytelling than we've seen the last couple of seasons, and it did keep my interest. Again, it just didn't have the same impact as it would have if it was Carl. Um, because Henry is a decent enough character in his own right, but at the same time he's not Carl. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about that. So I don't know if you want to add anything on along those lines, or if you want to keep rolling. But
I mean, when it comes to anyone, supposing to fill Carl's shoes, I laugh at it.
I got you, buddy. I don't entirely blame you there. But rolling along, right around this same time, we end up getting this moment back to Negan in the jail in Alexandria, and somehow, some way, Negan's cell ends up being left unlocked. They should really fire that guy, right? Whoever he was. Um,
I don't know if he was getting paid.
yeah, yeah, he might have. Regardless of whether he was getting paid or not, he needs to be fired. But so Negan gets out of jail. That's another kind of big thing that went down. He ends up actually not doing what you think the Negan of old would have done, which is, wait and plot to kill, some of his enemies who had stuck him there. But no, he runs, and he goes. I believe he's actually confronted here by Judith, who kind of lets him go, which is kind of an awkward moment, but kind of speaks to this budding relationship between Judith and Negan. Which of course we know, again, should have been Carl, not Judith. But in any event. So Negan gets out. He ends up going back to the sanctuary, and kind of seeing the ruin of the sanctuary, and kind of coming to the conclusion that there's really nothing there for him anymore, which is, again, like a very different Negan than we've known in the past, which is kind of further, proof that he is, kind of a changed man. Um, so that's a whole interesting thing, and he does something here that the old Negan would have never done, and that is that he actually willingly goes back to Alexandria, goes back to the jail cell, turns himself in because he realizes that there's nothing out there. He would rather sit in the prison cell in Alexandria than be free on his own out in the wild again, which I think that just speaks volumes, in and of itself, about the seismic shift that is going on in Negan. Um,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like someone escaping from a maximum security prison,
yep.
and then, like, no more than some time later, just, you know what? I think I was better off in there.
Yeah, well, not that. Yeah, I get your point. Even though maximum security might be an overstatement, considering the door was left unlocked. But yeah, I definitely get your point there. But yeah, so you have that whole thing played out. That was interesting. Of course, it ends up being Judith that apprehends him again and brings him back. So now we're gonna flash back because we're kind of toggling between the two worlds. Um, with what's going on with the Whisperers at the Hilltop, with all those people, as well as what's going on with Negan and Alexandria. So, back to the Hilltop, then we come to find that the Whisperers actually roll up on the Hilltop looking for Lydia, which actually is something that Lydia herself said was not going to be a thing. She said her mom is in charge, but they don't go back for lost souls essentially, and she was lost, she was captured, so there's no way they would come for her. But surprise, surprise, mom broke her rule, and here they are. So they roll up on the Hilltop essentially, and they say they want Lydia. Um, Daryl ends up going to confront Alpha, of course, the leader of the Whisperers, who is one creepy, crazy bitch, I will say, for a lot of reasons that we're going to find out, as we delve more into. We find out, through Lydia's stories, that she, Alpha had abused her, and continues to abuse her physically. Um, but we also find out Alpha is a very cruel, cold, sadistic individual, and there are a lot of things that she does that lend us to this, and one of them is coming up real quick. So basically, what happens is there were a couple of people, actually, the aforementioned Luke, as well as Alden, the other character was. Those were two characters that Alpha and the Whisperers had apprehended while they were out. Looking for, ironically, looking for, Daryl and Michonne and all of them. So they get taken prisoner, and basically Alpha offers a prisoner exchange. In order to get Lydia back, she'll give, Luke and Eldon back to the Hilltop, which Daryl initially rejects this offer. Um, but then realizes that there's really no other way, and ultimately takes it. But the more interesting thing here to me in this whole sequence is, as we're waiting for this whole sequence of events to play out, and the deliberation on Daryl's part, if he wants to, because he doesn't want to hand Lydia over to Alpha, because he knows that she's been abused, and he knows that Alpha is nuts, and he doesn't want to do it. But in this moment, one of the Whisperers actually is carrying a baby on them, and the baby starts crying, which starts attracting the actual zombies. So Alpha, at Alpha's order, this woman basically lays her baby down on the ground to be eaten alive by the zombies, even though the baby ends up getting saved by Connie. But this just lends to the absolute brutality of the character that is Alpha, which is, just, I mean, who would sacrifice an infant like that? You know what I mean? Like, that is some harsh shit right there. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think you would have to be anyone who wears a dead person's face on their face.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I mean, as if it wasn't proof enough, essentially, that these people are just out there. This is, even further driving the point home. Um, so anyway, moving along from all that, then we have, after the prisoner exchange, Henry, being, head over heels for Lydia, decides that he's going to go help her. So he ends up following the Whisperers. Obviously a pretty ill-advised decision. He ends up being caught, and Alpha and her second in command, Beta, decide that they're going to essentially make Lydia kill Henry to kind of set an example, because all of this, has kind of stirred the Whisperers up, has created an unrest within the group of the Whisperers. Actually, moments before this happens, Alpha actually is confronted by two of the other Whisperers who basically say that she broke her own rule by going back for Lydia, that she failed, even though Alpha tries to justify it by saying that Lydia could have had information about, about the hilltop and other people that could have been useful, but they aren't buying it. So Alpha ends up basically just outright just killing these people, like straight up, just for questioning her authority, which is again is another thing that just lends to the absolute brutality that is Alpha. Um, so basically, and then she again on top of that is going to force her daughter to kill the person that she has grown to like in Henry in cold blood, basically. When luckily Daryl and Connie show up and save them, and prevent that whole thing from unfolding, and they all get away there, which lends us to our next episode, where um, Daryl, Connie, Lydia, and Henry are running from the Whisperers. They decide to hold up in a building, and kind of create like a choke point, like basically set a trap for the Whisperers because they know they're coming for them. They don't want to go back to either the Hilltop or Alexandria or anywhere because they don't want to lead the Whisperers back. So they end up engaging the Whisperers in this building. You have a pretty cool fight scene actually between Daryl and Beta as this whole thing unfolds. They kind of fight and talk, and you can really see it's a good storytelling fight because you can really see the contrast in mindsets here, where the kind of like just the sick, twisted, warped mindset of the Whisperers, that they just think the world is dead and the only way to live is by wearing the skin of the dead and walking with them, which is
Well,
obviously
they've been the thing is too. They've been doing that the whole time.
right.
Like the Whisperers have been like literally there the whole time, just no one knew.
Yeah, yeah, which is crazy to think about in retrospect, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so you go through that whole thing with Daryl and Beta. Basically, Daryl wins the fight, knocks him down like an elevator shaft. But of course, as we mentioned before, if you don't see a body, they're not dead. So so Beta is not dead here.
When you
Um,
saw his body, he just gets back up
yeah, well, well, actually, initially you didn't see his body. It was just a darkened elevator shaft. So, um, but anyway,
until they zoom down into it.
yeah, that was a little bit later, but yes, I get your point. That
Yeah.
is true. So, so then in the course of this fight, though, Henry becomes injured. They cut his leg or whatever. So they decide that their only option is to go back to Alexandria. So that is going to lead us back to Alexandria in the next episode, where the group of people go back for help, essentially to get Henry stitched up, and they end up trying to convince, again, talking about the fair, the trade fair that the kingdom is organizing. They try to convince Michonne and Alexandria to come. They still say no. Then Michonne and Judith kind of get into it, where Judith kind of, after Michonne sends Daryl and company on their way, Judith and Michonne kind of get into it, and Judith actually runs away, which leads to Michonne running after her and freaking out, and ultimately leads us to actually finding out what has been teased like in and out pretty much the whole season, which is what happened in the 6-year time jump that led Michonne to being this way. And the quick and dirty version of it essentially is this. While Michonne was still pregnant with RJ, her and Rick's child, she happened upon an old friend of hers who was out there in the woods with a bunch of kids, basically, and she ends up taking them all back to Alexandria and taking them in and taking care of them because it's an old friend from school or whatever, I think. And then basically, she comes to find out that this friend is not who she thought she was. basically betrays her, steals all their like food and supplies and shit, kills their guards to escape unnoticed, take kidnaps all their children too on top of it, including a younger Judith at this point, which is just, we could spend a lot of time talking about how fucked up that whole thing is, which we won't. But basically this woman who Michonne had thought was her friend has all these kids basically brainwashed into doing her dirty work for him, which is of course, so fucked up. Um, so Michonne and Daryl end up running after them, and they get taken prisoner actually by this woman and this group of kids, and that is when they, for seemingly no reason, in my opinion, actually get branded with these X scars. Like they take the hot irons and basically brand them like animals. And I kind of don't understand why they did that. It really served no purpose, in my opinion, other than to just to torture them, I guess. Um, but
Well, like X marks the spot, you know?
I guess I don't know, but in any event, so somehow, fast forward like 5 seconds after that, and somehow Daryl got loose. I don't know how, even though they were bound and gagged, Daryl got out somehow.
Well, I mean, it's Daryl.
I get main character powers activate again. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that whole thing, and essentially, to make a long story short, um, they confront these people. Michonne basically hacks up her friend essentially in anger, and she's trying to get Judith back. Judith is in a trailer or whatever, and she's trying to get to her through the kids, and the kids are like trying to kill her. They like actually the one kid slashes her across her stomach as she is pregnant, obviously, which is a huge deal, obviously a huge problem, and
It's just a flesh wound.
oh well, essentially, and that leads essentially Michonne to snapping and slaughtering all of the kids herself. So that is
Except for,
except for hers, obviously.
wasn't there one um in that RV that they were like keeping locked up, or was that just Judith? I
That was
can't
Judith.
remember.
Well, no, it was Judith, and there were some other kids from the from Alexandria that were kidnapped that were in the
Oh,
RV.
okay.
Yeah,
That's right. That's
so
right.
I believe it was all of the kids who her friend had brainwashed into doing her bidding that
Yeah.
Michonne ended up having to basically go Anakin Skywalker episode 3 on the
She
and
kept she kept begging though, like, don't, please don't make me do
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Like,
she
please
did, but
just
she had no
stop. Don't make
choice
me
at that
do
point.
this.
She had snapped, and now we finally, I have to say I actually really like this whole thing, because I think that if you were gonna like this whole time that they were teasing like, oh, some traumatic event happened to Michonne and now she's like this, I was thinking like, yeah, this is gonna be nothing. Like it, I was not impressed at the idea, but then when they actually played it out, I was like, wow, this actually makes a lot of sense, and this makes her totally justified in how she is, in my opinion, because like if something like that happened to you, like if one of your friends, like if you had to kill your friend and then like slaughter a bunch of kids, like just to save like your adopted daughter, you know what I mean, in that situation, like and save your unborn child, obviously, too, like if you were put in that situation, like you'd probably lose it too, so
I probably would have lost it way before she did.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Like with the second that they branded my ass,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I probably would have been like, all you little motherfuckers are dead. Like,
Yeah.
all of you are dead.
Yeah, no, but yeah, so that was a pretty brutal and extreme episode, but I thought it was good to get that again, good storytelling, good writing, justification, it makes sense, so that another thing that I enjoyed was that whole thing. So the moral of the story is this. So after kind of opening up to Judith about all of this stuff, Michonne kind of has a change of heart finally and decides, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get back out there. I can't, this was terrible, obviously, but I can't let this stop me from helping my friends anymore, which is the right decision, obviously. So, um, so she ends up going to the fair. She actually ends up taking, Daryl and Henry and everybody to the fair in a wagon, which leads us to the fair actually, which to my dismay, which I'll talk about in a second, is not the season finale, but the episode before the season finale, and I have a lot of problems with that, which I'm going to talk about after we talk about what happens in this episode. So, um, getting into this episode, the fair is underway. Ezekiel makes a nice speech in the beginning of the episode. He busts out his old, he had a treaty drawn up, like a peace treaty between all of the groups that leaders from all of the groups sign. Him and Carol for the hilltop, and Tara for, or I'm sorry, him and Carol for the kingdom, Tara for the hilltop. And I believe it was Gabriel actually who signed for Alexandria. A couple other people. So yeah, it's like a treaty. So they talk about obviously the looming threat of the Whisperers, because the Whisperers are in the background, plotting some revenge at this point. Obviously, they're not happy about everything that's gone down. Um, they kind of make an agreement that if one of their communities are attacked, that's an attack on everybody, and everybody bands together to fight these people and stop them, which is all nice and all well and good. In this episode, and I think you would agree, this episode was going so well in the beginning that you knew, even with no knowledge of the comics or what's to come, you just knew that something horrific was on the horizon, because in a show like The Walking Dead, you never get that feel good environment for very long. And normally, when you get that feel good environment, is right before one of the harshest slaps across the face. So you knew, like, for the first half of this episode, that something was building, something awful was building. Um, but moving through the episode, we have actually Alpha actually had ambushed, a wagon with a few people on it that was heading toward the fair, and she does this for no greater reason than to slaughter them, so she can actually scalp the woman who was traveling with them, and then make a wig out of her head that she could use to disguise herself to infiltrate the fair. Wow. Like,
Straight up Native American style.
yeah, I mean, like I said, like, and this is another, sidetrack that I want to take, briefly here. Um, this, again, as I mentioned, there have been so many displays of just unbridled brutality on the part of Alpha, throughout this season, and is really driving the point home that this is a new force to be reckoned with here in the Whisperers, led by this just 100% stone cold, just brutal, remorseless, just psychopathic individual as Alpha is. Um, and I think, the reason that they've gone so far, and I enjoy that they have, is the fact that I think in any TV show or movie series or anything like that, you are always under constant pressure to one up your villain, if you know what I mean. So if you have, like, your
Yeah, it's like you got Negan who's like, I am all evil, and then you got Alpha going, yeah, well,
watch
meet my
this.
pike.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that, so, if you look at the evolution of the villains, or at least the main villainous characters in The Walking Dead, who do you have first? You have Shane, basically. And it's hard to even call him a full-blown villain, honestly, because he was a bad guy, don't get me wrong, but, like, there was still a semblance of, like, he did what he did, because he thought he was doing the right thing. I mean, there was some selfishness, I think, obviously behind it, but he wasn't really like a centralized villain, even though he was definitely, I would say, the first antagonist on the show. So then you precede him with the governor, obviously, who's even more fucked up than him in many ways, and definitely a more centralized villainous character. You get rid of him, and it's like, okay, how do you one up him? Enter Negan, essentially, at that point. I mean, there were some other, minor ones in the middle, in between here and there of all these, but we're not going to talk about those because we're already running out of time as is. Um, but, then you have Negan, which, like you said, it's like Negan was supposed to be the ultimate bad guy, essentially, right? Like, Negan was supposed to be like the cream of the crop as far as villainous characters go, like the most evil bastard you've ever seen, right?
Yep.
So it's like, how do you, when you create a character so heinous as Negan, how do you one up Negan, you know? enter.
with somebody like Alpha.
Exactly. And that's my point, is that I appreciate everything they've done with Alpha from a storytelling perspective, because it makes perfect sense that and I actually think that they've done a good job at attempting to one up Negan. Now I don't know at this point. I think it's still a little early to tell whether or not Alpha will fully, eclipse Negan as far as like being, an overall bigger villain than Negan, because I think at Negan's height of his run, that he was still a more monstrous, individual than Alpha is. Um, but I think that Alpha is definitely, and the Whisperers are definitely on track to overtake Negan and the Saviors if they stay the course as the most heinous villains the show has ever seen, which again is what you want in the natural progression of the story. So I'm definitely all for this. But um, back to the fair. So Alpha, disguised, infiltrates the fair. She does this for two reasons: to observe the people and the way that they live, and also to start kidnapping people, as we find out later. So toward the end of this episode, we kind of get like a back and forth with like present versus like a flashback to the night before, essentially, because they know the Whisperers are out there. So Daryl, Carol, Michonne, and Yumiko end up going out to try and patrol, or whatever, and they end up getting taken prisoner by the Whisperers, and then you have a flashback. Basically, simultaneously as in the present time, which is the next morning, um, you have uh, Alpha and having a conversation with them, and then having a conversation alone with Daryl as well about the way things are going to be, between the Whisperers and everyone else. Simultaneously, you have that flashback with Alpha, having infiltrated the fair, and she of course finds actually Lydia, and has a convert in the movie theater there. That was the big draw of the fair, was they were going to see a movie, which they hadn't in ages, because it's the apocalypse. Um, and then you come to the back and forth between Alpha and Lydia. Basically, Lydia saying that she doesn't want to be a part of her mom's world anymore, and that she wants to stay with the people here, and that that's the life she wants, and that she just wants her mom to go away, and typical teenage girl stuff, I guess. But anyway, to a much more hard extent here. So yeah, and then you flash back and forth with that, with the conversation with Daryl, and actually, they lead on, like, because they're trying to keep tight knit, what exactly happened, with the back and forth cameras. So Alpha kind of says something to the effect to Daryl of, I hope you can protect her, but I don't think you can. And then Daryl just kind of says, "You're wrong." And Alpha says to Daryl, "Okay, so you and your people can go." And she starts telling him about the borders of their territory, and she says, "As you exit through the field, you'll see the border that I've marked to the north. That will signify the line between my land and your land." So now we come to the iconic, definitely one of the most iconic scenes from the comics, in my opinion, across all the comics, and that is, of course, the infamous Pike line scene at the end of this episode. So, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. So, as Daryl, Carol, Michonne, and Yumiko exit, they happen upon a beaten and battered Sadiq, who has been floating around, the whole season, doing relatively unimportant things as well. Um, tied to a tree. They unhook him, as they go up the hill, they happen upon the pike line. And the pike line, for those of you who don't know, is essentially as Alpha had infiltrated the fair, she ended up kidnapping uh, 10 people. In the comics, it was 12. But on the TV show, 10 people, killing them, beheading them, and sticking their zombified heads on pikes to go ahead and draw the line between her land and their land. Again, holy
This
shit.
land is my land. This land is your land.
Perfect,
I've
perfect.
got the border to show you where to, not to go over, or else this will happen to 10 more of your people.
Thank you, thank you. That deserves a round of applause. All right, that's it. That's enough. But yes, so yeah, that's what happens. And again, at this point, I think we get it. Alpha is quite potentially the most brutal and remorseless villain that the show has seen, and that is just it's really saying a lot when you consider the fucked up individuals, specifically the governor and Negan, who were front runners before. I think Alpha is just absolutely brutal, sadistic, cold, remorseless, and that is just a character that is very polarizing, and a character that is interesting to watch, to say the absolute least. But um, going back to the Pike line, now, the people who were kidnapped and killed for the Pike line, which actually ended up being very different from the people who were in the comics. We're going to go over those people, briefly, since again we are running out of time as usual. I'm only going to touch on the big ones on the TV show. Basically, the only big deaths that you got out of the Pike line on the TV show, in order, um, were Enid, Tara, and Henry. And that last one sticks with me for, many a reason that we're going to get into, in a second. But yes, that is the Pike line. The big deaths on the Pike line from the TV show. I believe there was only one character that was the same from both the comic and the TV show, and that was Tammy, that older woman who wore the scarf on her head. She was the only one who got beheaded and stuck on the pike in both the comic and the TV show. I have to bring up the comic since, of course, that's what we do for comparison. In the comic book, the large character deaths, or the larger character deaths, I would say, were Luke, Rosita, and Ezekiel. Actually, King Ezekiel was the big one at the end of the Pike line in the comics. That was the big shocker, the big reveal. And actually, they had alluded to this on the TV show, and they had me going that this is what they were going to do, because throughout the episode, toward the end of the episode, you have Alpha, actually in disguise at the fair, approached Ezekiel and asked him, "Oh, can you show me where this is?" And he kind of like takes her hand and it's like, "Yeah, I'll lead you over there." And she's like, "Oh, it's going to be a cold winter, better prepare," or something like that. Very ominous words. So we were very much led to believe that Ezekiel was done, from that scene. And yet they pulled, they got us, they got me anyway. They had me going, but and then especially at the movie showing, because the whole movie thing at the fair was a big deal for Ezekiel, and he actually wasn't present in the crowd watching the movie, which kind of led me to believe, oh shit, she really got him. But then, within the course of the flashbacks, you come to find that Ezekiel had actually been working the projector behind the scenes, so he was there the whole time, and that in fact it was Henry who had been taken and killed and beheaded and stuck on the pike line at the end. So,
Yeah, I think the only way they could have made that more brutal is if they used like Henry's stick.
oh, for the pike, yeah, ooh, that would have been
Yeah.
nasty. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about the on the TV show how I feel about those big deaths on that pipeline because like I said, I got a lot to say about that last one. So Enid, I actually think was a good idea. I think that her character had kind of run its course on the show. She was a more important character in seasons past. However, she had really, in this season, kind of fallen out of the limelight, and she really, her character had kind of stagnated. It wasn't, really relevant or that important in this season. So I'm 100% fine with her being killed off here. Same thing with Tara, actually, although she was definitely in a more active role this season than Enid was. I still think that her character had kind of run its course, had kind of stagnated, and I think that it was her time to go as well. So I don't have an issue with that at all. Um, the only one that I do have a pretty sizable issue with is Henry at the end of that pike line. And um, I would say the biggest reason that I have an issue with this is because it takes away from what this moment is supposed to signify, as far as what the comics and the source material concerned. Because the fact that Ezekiel was that last head on that pike line in the comics was huge, was absolutely huge. Not only just because Ezekiel is a big important character on the show, but also because he's a leader of one of the communities. So you say, okay, here's an enemy who, unbeknownst to everyone, infiltrated your home, found your leader, kidnapped him, killed him, chopped his head off, and stuck it on a stake. What a statement that is. What a story that tells. What a danger that poses to everyone else, that your leader could be done to your leader and no one knew about it. That is what makes this statement so powerful, I think, in my opinion, is the fact that Ezekiel was that last head on that pike line in the comics. That's what made that moment one of the most iconic moments in the Walking Dead franchise. And they completely took that away by replacing him with basically at this point a wounded and more or less defenseless young boy, essentially, whose character was just coming into his own on the show, whose character had so much more to give to the show, had so many more places to go on the show, had so much more to do on the show. I think that Ezekiel's character, though I do very much enjoy and have very much enjoyed Ezekiel's character on the show, I think that this was really his time to go out on the pike line. And the fact that they changed that one crucial thing really kind of ruined one of the most iconic moments in the entire series. But I'm interested to get your take on that. Being someone who so closely follows the comics, and as I said, I think most of the time The Walking Dead's at its best when it follows the source material. Um,
Well,
so
I mean, I feel a little impartial because I feel like since the show has in a way strayed pretty far from the comics in certain degrees, especially major degrees. I
yeah,
think that the point of having Henry there
hmm,
was because at the end of the day, Alpha doesn't, respect her daughter's decision,
right,
and does still want her back.
right,
And I think with Henry being, on the spikes, it kind of, and maybe in Alpha's mind, takes away her reason for wanting to stay there.
right, and
So
I'm actually really glad that you brought that up because that's one of the other painful things about this is that as much as it pains me to admit it, having Henry on that pike line from a story perspective actually does make a good deal of sense because you would have to think, as you said, which I 100% agree with, in Alpha's mind, this is all Henry's fault. Right? Like everything that's
yeah,
happened is on him. Like he's the one who befriended Lydia, who started to have this relationship with her, who made her stray from her mom's side, from her mom's order. So I 100%, and again, knowing the sadistic and brutal, cold individual that Alpha is, she would 100% want retribution on Henry for that. So I 100% think that having him on a pike line is actually a logical, to a large degree, a logical decision. Um, I still don't like it for the reasons I mentioned. And then a couple more that I'm going to mention in a second. But yeah, I do get that. Another reason that I don't like it per se is because it actually kind of, and I don't know if you got this feeling, it kind of almost gave me a similar feeling to when Carl died actually last season. Ironically, to the guy who was taking over Carl's plot points, because it just kind of felt wrong in a sense of like it's The Walking Dead. Essentially, what it is, it's The Walking Dead killing its own future yet again, and that's how I felt about Carl's death. As I felt the show is killing its future by killing this character, and I feel like Henry had the potential. He had so much potential to be so much more, and especially in the position they put him in with the relationship with Lydia, and they ruined that by killing him off short, I think. So I don't know if you get what I'm saying there, that they
No, I agree, but I think because the pipeline was happening, that's the only reason that. Because I don't think that I think it's Alpha's, like you said. I'll stand by it. It's Alpha's goal to get her daughter back
right, and that
for whatever reason, and that kind of would, in her mind, be what does it. And if she couldn't get her daughter back, I could see Henry still being alive. Like if Henry wasn't what Alpha felt was the reason for her daughter's quote unquote, betrayal. I think that the Pike line would have been different. Maybe if they had made a relationship a little later on after that happened, and at that point, who knows? Maybe at that point we would have seen Ezekiel on it instead to give the impact. But I think just because of the story writing and the way things went, that it's they're not really looking to expand on Lydia and Henry's relationship, obviously, anymore. But what they did open themselves up to was Lydia becoming very resentful and angry towards her mother, which could have essentially become the Whisperer's downfall. Because, I mean, what doesn't she know about them? You know what I mean? And now maybe
exactly.
she's going to be on a more vengeful front of like, okay, it's time to take you guys out because of what you've done.
Yeah, and not only that, I do agree with that, but not only that, but I also get the feeling, this is another big problem. I think the last big problem I have with Henry being, killed here is that it gives me the sensation of like, where does Lydia go from here? Like, how sometimes how characters are so intertwined with each other that when you kill one of them off, it's like you really massively, massively, massively damage the property and the goods of the other character. And the best example I can think of this in the show, not to circle back to it for the 100th time, is Rick and Carl. Like when they killed Carl off from the show, they took a piece of Rick away, perhaps the most important piece of him away, by doing that. And I feel like they've done that to Lydia to essentially handicap her character here. Is they've taken away one of the crucial pieces of Lydia, which is, in the comics it was her relationship with Carl, in the TV show it was her relationship with Henry. Like Henry was her tie to Alexandria, to the hilltop, to the normal people. Henry is her connection to those people, and now that he's gone, what is her connection to those people? There isn't one. So I think that a greater story could have been told actually here by leaving Henry alive. That's the final thing I will say, because if, say, they made that one change, for example, and say they had Ezekiel on the pike line instead of Henry, right? If they do
Mm-hmm.
that, now you open up a whole, no, now you maintain to an extent, maintain the bond that Lydia and Henry have, but now you create a potential turmoil in that bond, because now you'd have Henry saying, I lost my dad for you, and you'd also have him undergoing all sorts of guilt and all sorts of, changes and transformations in his character, like, holy shit, like, I got my dad killed essentially by like what I did, and that, changes the game with him and Carol too. It's like, you know, he's dead because of me, type of thing. And at the same time it maintains Lydia's ties with their group as well. So I think the smart money definitely would have been on keeping Henry alive here. I'll maintain that. Maybe we'll agree to disagree on that. But, as I said, as it does make, a great deal of sense that Henry would die here, I still maintain that it would have been a better decision in the long run to keep him alive and take Ezekiel out here. And I think that, again, like, this is reminiscent of when Carl died, in my opinion. I believe I said this on the last show, and I steadfast everything that's happened in this season has only reinforced the statement I made, last time. Between, if it came down to eliminating Rick or Carl from the show, it would be a better decision to eliminate Rick from the show than Carl, because Carl is essentially the future of the show. Rick might be the past and even the present of the show, at that point, but Carl is the future, and you need to at some point start planning for your future. And I felt the same way about Henry and Ezekiel. Like, Ezekiel may be the past and present of the show, but Henry could be the future of the show, if you write him correctly. And again, this circles back to what I said, which is basically it's The Walking Dead killing their future again. And that's the biggest issue that I have here is the short-sightedness on their part. At least that's how it feels, for me. So, um, but yeah, so that comes to the end of that episode, and now we're gonna move to again, another nit I have to pick briefly. The fact that this episode was not the season finale really pissed me off even farther, because I feel like that even further detracts from the whole pipeline thing again, which was supposed to be one of the most iconic moments from the comic, from the source material, is the Pike line. And the fact that that wasn't even a season finale or a mid-season finale, at least, that really didn't sit with me. I really did not like that. So, but I guess it was what they wanted, because they wanted ice zombies, and that's what you got in the season finale was ice zombies, ladies and gentlemen. There you go, ice zombies. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, because I felt this episode was not, largely, aside from a couple of happenings, was not that important of an episode, and definitely a shitty way to end the season, to put it mildly. The Pike line would have been 100 times better season finale than what this was. Even with the death of Henry over Ezekiel, it still would have been 100 times better of a season finale than this. So basically, to get through it real quick, the season finale is months after the events of the fair and the Pike line. The kingdom has fallen, presumably because of Ezekiel and Carol being distraught over Henry's death. But you know what would have made even more sense than that? If Ezekiel had died, and then the
Jeez,
kingdom would have fallen,
I
because
wonder.
guess what? Their king is dead. So, would that have not made a ton more sense? Like, um, but yeah, so they're all out in a snowstorm, essentially traveling, to try and get back to either the hilltop or Alexandria or whatever, get everybody out. The snowstorm strikes. You have groups of people, out there. You have, like Michonne and Daryl and Ezekiel and Carol, and all those people are together. And then you have, a bunch of other people together, like Eugene and Rosita, Gabriel. And that's another thing that, another little side thing that I wanted to just mention for a second, is you have this weird relationship, this weird that's budded the last several episodes with it's a love quadrangle, as Negan dubbed it. So basically the situation is this: Rosita is dating Gabriel, yet pregnant with Sadiq's child, yet Eugene is sitting in the corner touching himself to Rosita. So which actually, now that I think about it, kind of makes sense, because if you recall back to, like, what was that, like season 4 or whatever, where like Abraham and Rosita were like doing it, and like Eugene was watching them or
Eugene was
something.
watching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, then you got that whole weird thing going on, and then to make matters even weirder, you have Negan traveling with them for some reason, who is out of his cell. I don't even know why, to be honest with you. But he's out of his cell. He's traveling with them through the snowstorm. And, to make a long story short again, because we are running out of time, basically Judith is there as well, and she runs into the blizzard because she hears Daryl's dog, who by the way is named Dog, which is another thing that I absolutely cannot stand, that happened this season. But there it is. Dog, come here, dog. But anyway, so she runs after the dog. Negan runs after Judith into the blizzard in a completely selfless act, seemingly cementing Negan's character change. He finds Judith and saves her and the dog. And yeah, so there's, Negan's road to redemption is more or less complete at this point. Um, they have, I will say, you know, I know, the whole thing with Negan's road to redemption and everything that we've watched play out over the season. I don't have a problem with that per se. I don't have a problem with the story. What I do have a problem with in this whole situation is the time frame. And I understand that in the show they've had, these time jumps which kind of messes everything up. So all in all, with the two time jumps, it's like over a 7 year gap, that since the end of the war. But it still feels like it's only been a season on the TV show, right? So to me, it still feels too soon for anything like this to be happening with Negan. And I guess, yes, Negan has a soft spot for Judith, and I understand that, and, whatever. And Negan's, turned over a new leaf or whatever. But I feel like this kind of goes hand in hand with my prior statement. I would have been so much more okay with this if this had been the season premiere for season 10. I would have been so much better with it if that was the case. But here we are. We have it now, which I think is just too soon. But I'm interested to get your take on that as well, because I know that's one of the subplots that you've been really paying attention to this season, is kind of Negan's road to redemption, so to speak. So,
Well, I mean, I felt like, I get your point about it all being in one season, but I feel like with the time jump that they did give us, I feel like, almost a decade's worth of time is more than enough time for somebody to have, some sort of a character change. And Negan especially, because, like you said, the one thing that he did stress, even when he was Negan, is that, like, we don't hurt children and, like, we don't rape women. So there was some moral structure there.
That's funny considering he had like 10 wives, and yeah, that kind
Yeah,
of
but
either sleep with me or I kill somebody that you love. So yeah, But anyway, continue.
it still made it conceptual. It's
That's a murky area there that I don't think we want to get into. But I don't entirely agree with that. See, that's another thing, with Negan. But anyway, go ahead.
But he did kill. I mean, when Sasha was in there, and she almost got herself forced on. Like, he did kill that guy.
That is fair. Yes.
Now here's the thing. I think, and more so with the children than anything, I think Negan, felt like, in a way, like he owes it, like most of them do. Like they owe Rick in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and that's weird to get that out of Negan though, which I guess does really cement his character change, because if Negan is having those feelings of I'm basically alive right now because of Rick, even though I rotted in jail for 7 years, in some way perhaps I owe this to the presumed dead Rick to save his not even daughter, but daughter. So,
to save Shane's daughter, yeah,
to save Shane and Laurie's daughter.
But no, I mean, it's I can't, like I said, I can't say it disappoints me. I kind of enjoy the fact that you got to finally see Negan make full circle, and
Well, you do enjoy a good redemption story. We know that. So,
I do.
so,
So,
but
you
yeah, but
know,
fair enough there. I still, like I said, I don't disagree with the, the principle. But like I said, the one season thing just gets it for me. Maybe in time, that'll wear off on me, but it is what it is. So, the only other things that things that I want to touch on briefly as far as that season finale goes are, we actually see in this episode, Lydia is very torn up and distraught actually over the events of obviously losing Henry and whatnot, and we actually get to a point where, she actually almost commits suicide in this episode by Walker. Where she ends up finding a walker, frozen in the ice, and she, in a very, ironically, in a very similar fashion to what Carol did all the way back in season 3, I believe it was, goes up to this zombie and is like holding her arm out like she almost is gonna like let it kill her essentially, which is what Carol did in season 3, and actually the way that Carol died in the comics in season 3 was she committed suicide by zombie essentially. So I thought that was interesting, and ironically, Carol is the one to kind of happen upon her as she's like sitting there contemplating doing this, and kind of like tell her, come on, get up and let's go, to essentially save her from doing that to herself. Um, and then they get into a little debate later on. Like Lydia kind of breaks down and she's like, Henry's dead because of me, and everything's all because of me, and she's obviously broken down, self-pity, all the whole 9 yards, and she wants Carol to kill her basically. Like she doesn't want to live anymore. Like she's really out there now. Like she's very grief stricken over the whole thing, and Carol refuses to do it obviously, and she wants her just to keep going. Like you just have to keep going, so I think that's definitely, we definitely haven't seen the last on that front, but yeah, so
no,
we have that, and we have, for another weird thing, for some strange reason, Carol decides to leave Ezekiel at the end of the episode. I guess just because the stress of everything is too much, so she decides to break up with him, which is like, I think stupid, but whatever. And we also find, the whole time they were going through the blizzard, everybody was concerned about running into the Whisperers, but we find at the end of the episode that the Whisperers are basically like birds, because apparently they migrated to warmer climates. So they weren't even there the whole time that the people were trudging through the blizzard. So, interesting enough there. It does make sense to a degree. And then at the very end, after the fact, you have, a mysterious voice on the radio after, I believe it was Ezekiel who was, or someone, I forget who, I think it was Ezekiel, but I don't remember, was communicating with someone on the radio. At this point, I was just so disappointed that this was the season finale and not the Fair with the Pike line. um, but but yeah, so yeah, Ezekiel, I believe it was, on the radio, and then, after they hang up the radio and leave, you hear, what sounds like a woman's voice on the radio, mysterious, which a lot of people have speculated that could potentially be a returning Maggie. But those people don't understand that in the comic, that scene was actually reminiscent of, discovering yet another new group of individuals, moving forward. So, who knows what they're going to do with that? That was the final scene of the season. So, that pretty much wraps it up. As far as the recap, now I want to just take a very small amount of time to kind of talk about where the franchise has been left, post season 9, heading into season 10, since obviously we are once again way over time. So, at this point, obviously, season 9, I said it before and I'm going to say it again, was a huge roller coaster to say the least. You've had, probably one of, if not the, biggest seismic shifts, that the series had ever seen. Within season 9, you go from, the whole thing with Rick playing out to, everything with the Whisperers to, the Fair, the Pike line in the end. Um, there was a lot, and that's why this show might end up being one of, if not the longest episodes of the Captain's Table I've ever recorded, because there was just a lot to get through. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff that happened, and that wasn't even everything. Obviously, that was only what I considered to be the most important parts of season 9. Um, so yeah, going forward into season 10, basically, I want to say as far as season 9 goes, like where we're left, before season 10. And you can tell me, I'm interested to get your thoughts on it. But overall, I feel more positive about the show than I did at the end of the last season. And I think that's definitely, a step in the right direction. I think that, like I said, season 9 was a massive roller coaster of ups and downs. I think there are quite a few things they could have done to make season 9 better that they didn't do. But overall, it's honestly like, okay, if the last episode and part of the one before that hadn't played out the way it did, I could honestly say I enjoyed this season all in all. I can't quite say that now based on the fact that events of the last 2 episodes. I fall just a little short of saying that I enjoyed the season all in all. But I am looking forward to the future, because I will say that the show in some way has kind of like reignited my interest in it, in the sense that um, the show's proven that without Rick and without Carl, they can still hold a certain level of interest for me. However, that level of interest, it's obvious to me that that level of interest is never going to be the same as it once was. However, there is still some interest there. The other thing I have to say is that, sadly, I feel that even though we have new producers and writers and X, Y, and Z, I feel like the show still has not learned its lesson about making large bad decisions that contradict the comics. And the biggest reason I say that is because of the Pike line. And that's definitely a problem moving forward. But like I said, I did enjoy this season more than I enjoyed season 7, more than I enjoyed season 8. And I am a little more optimistic about the future of the show moving forward. But I'm interested to get your take.
Well, I feel like season 10 is has an opportunity to either keep the show in the direction it's going or just flop like the seasons before it. So I mean, I can't really speculate because this is the first season we had that we can consider decent since I believe what, like season 6.
The last 3 seasons, yeah, it's the first one that you could consider, at least average.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we'll just have to see because my honest opinion is, given track record, I'm not too hopeful.
That's fair.
but
That's fair.
but I mean, I would hope that it would continue to go in an upward direction. But again, not too hopeful because, like you said, my biggest fear is that no matter who you have writing and directing and producing, it doesn't seem like the lesson is learned. That there are certain things that make the story great that you can't keep changing.
Yes, and that's building on that point. I do want to expand upon that a little more and say that um, you you shouldn't do things as a writer, a producer, or whatever. You shouldn't do things that are like shock moments or like gotcha moments, just for the sake of doing a shock. You know what I mean? Like sometimes the logical decision is the logical decision for a reason. Like the obvious decision is the right decision, in a lot of situations. And I think that people try too hard, like to say, oh, well, it would be really fun if we swerve them here and, we do this instead. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't make as much sense as what you should have done. And that is going to damage the show going forward because you didn't make the logical choice here just because you wanted to say, ah, gotcha, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Hmm.
that's the big problem that The Walking Dead has had the past several seasons, that again they still haven't seemed to learn their lesson on that. And perfect evidence of that, in my opinion, is the Pike line replacing Ezekiel with Henry. That is the perfect example of that in my mind. That, like I said, if not for that, and if not for the stupid ice zombie thing at the end of the season, I would have gone as far as to say, like, overall I liked the season, and overall the season was positive and good. And I can't quite say that because of those last couple of bad decisions. um, but yeah, so that's, that is a concern moving forward. But there are two more things I want to bring up. One that actually might be cause for a little bit of concern, one that actually might be cause for joy, and that is, as we had the actor buzz before season 9 of, Rick and Maggie, leaving the show. We now have the actor buzz, prior to season 10, that Danny Guyeri, I believe, aka Michonne, is actually uh, more than likely going to be leaving the show in the next season as well. Um, so obviously that would be another huge hit for the show, to lose one of its largest remaining stars. However, that is coupled with some good news, that there are a lot of rumors flying around at this point that Lauren Cohan, aka Maggie, will actually be making her return to the show in season 10, which I think is something that a lot of people would be excited to see, myself included. So that's kind of like a good with the bad type of little rumor mill there about the actors, as opposed to a double bad last time around. Now at least we have one good, one bad. Um, but I'm interested to see, if that in fact does happen. I think the Michonne leaving thing is all but confirmed at this point. Unfortunately, that she's, in a similar boat where she's just not renewing her contract. So who knows if they're actually going to write her off or just kill her off? Because I believe we are happening upon. A moment in the comics that Michonne actually does die off her character. Um, at some point, in the latter portion of the comics. So, um, that is always a possibility. But again, as we mentioned before, kind of anything can happen. They've shown us with what they've done that anything can happen. As far as the Lauren Cohan returning, I think that's more rumors than it is confirmed at this point. But again, I think that would definitely be a much needed shot in the arm for the show at this point, because it's kind of, the show is kind of teetering at this point, in my opinion. I think you would probably agree with that, to say the
Yeah,
least.
yeah. No, I definitely agree with that.
And yeah, and bringing Maggie back into the fold would definitely be a much needed shot in the arm, especially if Danny Guyeri is going to be leaving. But feeding on that note, the last thing I want to mention is the ratings, and that is something we talked about last time, the ever plummeting ratings of The Walking Dead. And unfortunately, despite, as we both said, this season actually being better than its previous two seasons, unfortunately, the numbers reflect that the damage has been done to the franchise. And I know you had some of those numbers handy before. I don't know if you still do. Um, that the
Well,
viewership is way down for the show this season.
well, yeah. I mean, if you look at, I mean, do we want to start from season 1 to 9, or?
If you want to start from like the premiere, essentially the season 9 premiere with the viewership, you don't have to go through all the episodes, but that, I guess, the premiere and
Well, I want to do a season in total.
sure,
Let me do the averages.
okay,
Okay. Well, what I meant to say was a season premiere, like, how do I put it?
a premiere comparison,
Like seasons 1
yeah,
finale premiere total,
yeah,
season 2 finale, kind of show you the incline,
yes,
because I think it's going to make a bigger impact here,
right,
and it won't take too long.
right,
So you're looking at season 1, the finale. You had 6 million viewers.
yep,
Season 2, obviously the show uh, took
Gaining,
off,
yeah, gaining
did
some
a lot
speed.
better.
Yep.
9 million viewers.
Yep.
Season 3, 12.4 million viewers.
Yep. Even better.
Season 4, 15.7 million viewers.
Holy crap, we're going
Season
up.
5, 15.8 million viewers.
Peaking.
Season 6, 18 million viewers.
Oh,
Now, folks, this is where
the infamous worst cliffhanger ever season finale was the highest. Was the highest viewership. Yes.
so now people, this is where it gets scary.
That was a
Season
big turning
7.
point for the. I don't mean to stop you in your tracks, but yeah, that was needless to say a huge turning point for the show. That you've had all those people tune in to watch the most horrible cliffhanger that we've ever seen on a TV show, in my opinion. But continue into season 7. Now we're getting into the good stuff.
Oh yeah, season 7. Now keep in mind, season 6 was 18 million.
Mm-hmm.
Season 7, 11.3 million.
Mm.
Now season 8, 7.9 million.
Ugh.
Season 9,
Drum roll.
5 million.
Ouch.
Therefore, season 1 beat season 9.
Yes, yes. If you were following those numbers, folks, season 9 has the lowest viewership of any season finale of The Walking Dead ever, including season 1, where most people didn't even know about the show. Now, I want to add to that by saying that, and this is something else that really, really hurts me to say, but it is true. Um, I have to add to saying the lowest watched, the least watched episode of the entire 9 season series of The Walking Dead occurred in season 9, episode 15, The Fair with the Pike Line. Lowest watched episode in the entire series. God damn.
And that's saying something.
Yes. Now, remember what I said before, that with only 2.5 million viewers, mind you, for that episode, I believe the number was. Now, mind you, what I said before, sometimes surprising people isn't a good thing. Sometimes doing the predictable thing is what makes sense, is the right thing. Now, I'm sure that most fans who follow the comics would have assumed, based on the trajectory of season 9, that the season finale would have been the Fair and the Pike Line, right? That would have been a reasonable assumption on
Mm-hmm.
on everyone's part. So pulling the trigger on that episode, on that concept early, only further screwed you, because I know what they were thinking. They were thinking, "Oh, well, we're going to excuse me. We're going to pull the trigger on this big iconic moment early, so then people are going to be like, damn, we missed it, gotta tune in every week now." And yeah, you can see how well that worked, right? that just pissed
Mm-hmm.
people off, and they were like, man, they did this to us, and now we missed it, and yeah, we can watch it on a rerun, but whatever. But yeah, terrible decision, in my opinion. That sometimes swerving your audience is not a good thing. Sometimes doing the expected thing is the right thing. Um, Different is not always better, people. In short. um,
This is true.
so yeah, so there you have it. Now, I before we go, I do feel obligated to play a smidgen of devil's advocate here by saying that AMC themselves actually, or I believe rather, the people in charge of The Walking Dead, the producers and everyone associated, actually have been getting ridiculed for their descending ratings for so long that they actually decided to respond to it. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but this is what they said. I'm not quoting, I'm just paraphrasing. They said something to the effect of, oh, yeah, our ratings are falling, but the viewership across all of cable TV is falling. Therefore, it's not really that as bad as you think it is, and couple that with the fact that The Walking Dead is still, which is true, still the number one show on cable TV by a very large margin, I will add. Um, still means that they're still doing good in their minds. Now, I have to say, I do agree with pieces of this. The piece being that, yes, The Walking Dead, by the numbers, is still the number one rated show on cable TV. And yes, they did have farther to fall, by being the number one show than other TV shows. However, the math does not equal out. The math does not add up. The drops in viewership, because I don't know if you guys know this or not, but cable TV is kind of phasing out to a large degree, but those changes, those drops that they are seeing are not mirrors, are not the same as the overall, decline on cable TV. They are experiencing much larger drops than what the average is, or based on what I've seen and read. So that this is just kind of them trying to put a band-aid over it, essentially, and saying, hey, or maybe it's denial, I don't know, but it's them trying to say, hey, things aren't as bad as they look, like we still got viewers, and maybe they're not as bad as they could be, maybe they're not quite as bad as they were, but guess what, Walking Dead, guess what, AMC, they're still not good. They're still not good, just so you know. They're still not good.
And I'm sure they'll hear it.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're one of the 20 people who watch my shows. One of their execs are. But anyway, yeah, I think that.
It only take them 2 hours and 45 minutes to get to that point.
No, not quite that long. But in any event, I think that wraps it up. We are way over time, but as is always the case, passionate opinions run hot, run long. It is what it is. But that will do it for us here. Thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button. Share the video, leave a comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. If you did enjoy, stay tuned for more episodes of the Captain's Table to come. I want to thank Mitchelonius for trudging it out with me here once again to go ahead and have these lengthy, passionate discussions about another topic from the entertainment industry. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, and that is it, and we'll see you next time.